So, today I'm going to help you answer one of the most common questions probably that founders ask me, and it's like, should I go with cross-platform or native development for my mobile application? If you're watching this, you're probably already faced some opinions on this. Some people say cross-platform is the only smart choice. Others say if you want quality, you must go native. But the only truth is they are all right and wrong at the same time, because they're actually talking about their own experience, probably their project, their context, but not yours. And on my opinion, this is exactly where the problem starts. See, unfortunately, I've watched founders get this decision wrong, and it's very painful every time for them. Usually, what happens is a founder talks to a, let's say, cross-platform developer. Developer says cross-platform is the way to go. It's cheaper, faster, so it makes total sense. Okay, let's do it, and 6 months later, the app is almost done. 80% complete, looks great, maybe even in demos, but then they try to get this last 20% right. The native feel, the smooth animation, bug fixes, the edge cases on different devices. And suddenly the budget is gone. The timeline just doubled and they're stuck with the app that feels almost good enough, but not quite. The users complain about weird behaviors on their devices and post 1-star reviews on market. Or it also goes the other way. A founder gets advice to build native from the start. So he needs to hire 2 teams, maintain 2 code bases, doing it the right way. They spend 8 months and serious money building something beautiful, and then they launch and realize that nobody wants it. The idea just simply didn't work. They run out of runaway before they even validated the product. So both scenarios end the same way, unfortunately. It's dead startup or painful, very expensive pivot. And here's what frustrates me the most. That wasn't actually bad luck. It's simply the wrong decision for their specific situation. A decision they made based on someone else's opinion, not their own reality. So today I want to give you something different. Not my opinion on what is better in your case, but simple framework to figure out what is right for you. Okay, so let me quickly explain what we're actually talking about here. I promise to keep it very simple, but we need to talk about some basics. Native development means building 2 separate applications, one for iOS and one for Android. Usually 2 developers needed for this, or even 2 separated teams to work on each of the platform. Cross-platform development, and you probably already heard maybe some names like Flutter or React Native. This means one code base that runs on both platforms, so one developer can build for iOS and Android simultaneously in theory. We also have Kotlin multi-platform that allows you to build native apps by using Kotlin language for 80% of your code base, so you can share a lot in theory between your iOS and Android apps. But as for the beginning of 2026, I still think that this is a very early technology for startups, so let's not cover it for now. We'll just see how it goes on the long run, and probably we'll return to this a bit later. Let's talk about what actually matters for your decision. And I would like to start with native development. What are the real advantages here? Well, first, the performance ceiling is higher. If your app has heavy animations, works with the camera, GPS, AR, or anything complex with device hardware, native handles edge cases better. You won't hit mysterious walls where something just doesn't work the way you need it to do. Another big advantage is platform features available on a day one. When, for example, Apple announces something new at WWDC, native developers can use it almost immediately. But with cross-platform, you're waiting weeks or even months sometimes for third-party libraries to catch up. And that matters probably a lot if your business trying to move fast and iterate. It's also easier to find a senior talent, and this is something actually people really don't talk about enough. The best mobile developers often specialize deeply. Finding a senior iOS developer or Android developer is just easier than find a senior Flutter developer with equivalent depth in knowledge in the platform. The talent pool of native developers is simply bigger. And finally, troubleshooting is cleaner. When something breaks, you're dealing with one layer in native development. With cross-platform, you're always asking, is it a Flutter issue, a plugin issue, a native branch issue? It just gets complicated very fast, unfortunately. So now, that all sounds great, right? But here's the other side of native development. Two code bases means two costs. You're essentially building two separate applications. You double your initial build, double the maintenance, double the bug fixes, and there is simply no another way around this mess. It also means longer time to market. If you need both platforms fast, you either hiring two developers working in parallel or one developer doing sequential work but in a cost of time. And good luck to find a professional who able to cover both platforms in the same time with native development. And then there is a feature parity battle. Why does Android have this feature but iOS doesn't? This becomes real conversation with your users. So keeping both apps equal takes constant effort and planning. Plus, you have to deal with platform-specific user experience differences. For example, navigation works differently on iOS than on Android. So when you're designing your application, you need to consider these differences for both platforms. So you will just have more design work, just more decisions and complexity in general. But what about cross-platform development? Well, the obvious advantage here is only one shared code base for two platforms, main code base. Realistically, depends on the type of your product, you can share like 70 to 80% of your code between iOS and Android. The remaining 20 to 30% will be platform specific, but still one team to manage, faster initial launch. You also get faster iterations because you can change once in one place, it will deploy it everywhere. When you're moving really fast and testing ideas, this is something that really matters. And it's also definitely more cost efficient for the MVP stage. If you're validating your idea and budget matters for you, cross-platform gets you to market simply cheaper than native development. But of course, there are real downsides too. And this is where I need you to pay attention, because the biggest one I call the last 10% problem. This is crucial. You can deliver 80 to 90% of your app very fast with cross-platform. It feels great, you're making progress, but then getting this native feel, those platform-specific behaviors, the edge cases, this is where cross-platform projects usually go over budget. What looks like 90% done is often actually 60% done in terms of the time and effort that you need to put into it. The last way takes usually longer than anyone expects. And unfortunately, it's still a reality of cross-platform development even today. Now, about performance, I wanted to be honest here. For most apps, you won't actually hit the performance ceiling with cross-platform. But if your app is performance crucial, you and your users might feel it, especially on mid-range or some budget devices. So just know that ceiling exists. Another frustrating issue is when platform updates break some things. And as I already mentioned, new iOS comes out or new Android version comes out and suddenly your Flutter plugin don't work. You're just waiting for third parties to update their code and your app update is blocked by someone else's timeline. That's a terrible feeling, to be honest. Alright, so now you understand both sides. Here's the part you actually come from today, a simple decision framework that I suggest. When should you seriously consider going native? I will talk about 5 scenarios where native development is a way to go for you. First one is when your app is the product, not a companion to your website or SaaS, but the mobile app itself is what you're selling or what your entire business model is built on. If that's you, native development makes a total sense. Second, if performance or user experience is your competitive advantage. If you're building, let's say, a cutting-edge weather application with beautiful animations, some haptic feedback, something that should feel premium and delightful, native gives you that higher ceiling to work with. Third, it's when you're planning actually for 3+ years. If this app will exist and evolve for years, native actually costs less in the long run. The maintenance usually is cleaner, updates smoother, and you are not fighting the framework while you're trying to iterate. Fourth, obviously, if you have a budget for 2 quality developers, if you can afford to do it right from the start, just do it. And fifth, you're in a regulated industry. In fintech, for example, you often need to integrate with some bank SDKs that only have native implementations. In healthcare, you may need something called HIPAA, compliant biometric authentication, some secure access, or integration with Apple Health Kit and Google Health Connect. These things works better and more reliable with native code. So when compliance isn't optional for you, you want fewer layers between your app and the platform. And talking about another way to create an app when does cross-platform makes more sense. First, you're validating product market fit. You need to quickly and cheaply test if your idea even works. Get some real users, see if they care about your app before investing heavily. In this case, cross-platform is perfect for this specific stage. Second, your app is relatively standard. For example, content apps, e-commerce, marketplaces. So if your app mostly shows information and lets users interact with it, I mean, you're not doing heavy device hardware stuff. Cross-platform handles this well, even I would say for the long term. Third, if speed to market matters more than polish right now for you. We know that sometimes being first matters more than being perfect. So get out there, learn from real users, iterate based on what you discover, and decide later whether to stay with cross-platform or invest in native solutions. And fourth, your budget. If you simply cannot afford 2 code bases, the decision kind of makes itself, but go with your eyes open about the trade-offs we discussed a bit earlier. To tell the truth, many successful apps started cross-platform, validated their idea, and then rebuilt native when they hit a scale. Instagram, for example, did version of this. Airbnb did some kind of version of this. It's more common than you probably think. Starting with cross-platform and switching later, it's not a failure, it's actually a strategy. You learn what your app actually needs to be before you invest in some expensive builds and native development. Before wrapping up, I want to give you some warning signs to watch for when you're getting advice on this decision, even from myself. Many developers recommend what they know, not what you actually need. If you talk to a Flutter or native developer, guess what they will probably suggest? A good test is try to ask them to argue the opposite case, see if they actually can to do this. Also, watch out for anyone underestimating the last 10% in cross-platform development. I keep coming back to this because it's where I've seen the most budget disasters. That almost done phase in cross-platform development can literally double your timeline if you are not prepared and may eventually kill your business. So be really careful, and also be very careful if your core features depend on third-party plugins. If GPS location, camera, Bluetooth is central to your app's value, not just a nice-to-have feature, but the feature your business depends on, I would think very carefully about relying on community plugins and going with cross-platform in general, because one abandoned plugin can kill your entire business model. So look, the right answer here isn't universal. It's never is. It depends on your specific app, your timeline, your budget, and where your competitive advantage actually comes from. Take this framework, look at your specific situation honestly, and make the decision that fits your business, but not based on someone else's opinion or what worked for a completely different product. And good luck with your idea. See you.